Welcome to In the Green Room. I'm Kinga.
And I'm Chet.
And this is Martin. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, Dr. Sal. What's your full name?
Salvatore Cavaliere.
I didn't want to butcher that.
Salvatore Cavaliere. I love it. Welcome, Doctor.
Welcome. We're so excited. There's so much to talk about with you. You have so many hobbies, and being a doctor, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of doctor?
Well, King, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me here. It's an honor and a pleasure.
It's an honor you're here. Thank you so much.
And so here we are in Arizona, and I'm originally from Detroit. My parents were immigrants from Italy. And so I had a little bit of that European background growing up. And at the age of 10 years old, that's when I decided I wanted to be a doctor. It was kind of fascinating, but it was my fourth grade teacher in elementary school, Mrs. Hardaway, who was married to a medical student at Wayne State in Detroit. And he was going to medical school, and she decided she wanted to get more involved with understanding what her husband was doing. So she started putting together like a little program, a teaching program to learn about the body, the anatomy, and so forth. And so on the day that we were supposed to take this test, she asked the class if anybody wanted to take the test, and I was the only guy that rose his hand because it was extracurricular. But at that point,
You wanted to do extra.
well, yes.
That was interesting.
But
to
I
you.
was fascinated, and I studied it, and like I really got it. And the other thing was that was what, 1973, and what people don't realize is Marvel Comic had cartoons out back then in the 60s and early 70s.
Oh, yeah.
So I was very intrigued with Marvel Comics, you know, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, the Hulk, Spider-Man.
I love all that too. I love all that.
And so
Chet, you were
You
into
just
that.
like the tight outfits.
that too.
especially on Wonder Woman, right?
No, I like superheroes, but okay, continue.
No, but you know, a lot of that stuff, when you combine it, really put my mind into how can I help my fellow man? And I was very impressed because I ended up writing letters to Mrs. Hardaway's husband, and he would write back and say, Master Sal Cavaliere. I'm like, wow, this guy's really educated. You know, my parents could barely speak English. And actually, I spoke Italian before I spoke English because of that. But
So you speak Italian? You never mentioned
yes, I speak
that.
Italian.
You said two languages. I didn't know which ones.
Well, and I studied in Spain when I was 16. So the Latin languages I really grasped.
So you'd be a good friend to travel with. We could all go on a trip with you to Spain or Italy, and you could
South
speak
America.
for us. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, somebody has to do like a tracheotomy on the fly. He's on.
Like little Doctors Without Borders kind of action.
And you know what? It's interesting because on my keychain, and I got to see what I did with that thing. I actually have. It was a large bore needle where I can actually do an emergency trach anywhere.
Very
And
cool.
I used to do them in the emergency rooms in Detroit.
Wow.
And I was educating my residents to do the same thing, but I had it so if something like that happened anywhere, I could do a tracheostomy, you know, out in the streets if I had to. But
Wow.
That's incredible.
But you never had.
True lifesaver.
But you do have to tell
He's always ready.
our listeners what kind of doctor.
oh, I'm sorry. Well, I went to college, the University of Detroit. I majored in biology, went to Michigan State's osteopathic school, and I did my residency. Back then, we had to do a rotating internship. So I had to deliver babies, work in the ER, work in psych, work in pediatrics, all of that. And then I did a year of general surgery. And then I went after my specialty, which was ear, nose, and throat facial plastic surgery. Back then, osteopathic schools had provisions where you could be board certified in both. But a lot of my trainers, we did a lot of facial reconstruction with car accidents, facial fractures. And that's what I really wanted to get into.
That's incredible. That's helping people in the biggest way. I mean, if somebody's been in a car accident and they're deformed,
Oh, yeah.
that's incredible.
I mean, gunshots to the face, knife. I mean, you should see some of the stuff that
Wow.
I've seen. And coming from Detroit, Detroit's one of the top 5 trauma centers in the country. Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, Dallas, and Los Angeles.
Right.
Wow.
And so I've got a lot of experience in that. Plus, my trainers did a lot of cosmetic surgery, making extra money. And it's cash money, so you didn't have to deal with the insurance companies, which today a lot has changed. But anyways, and then from there, as much as I was doing all that cosmetic work, I really started to take a deep-seated interest in the inner ear. And so I met with
So
this-
interesting. Wait, you guys really have to listen to this. Okay.
So the inner ear, the head and neck became very intriguing to me because I wanted to go into orthopedics.
Mm-hmm.
I worked construction for my father. I was good with hands. I was good with fixing things. I was a bodybuilder, and orthopedics, you're going to be dealing with a lot of athletes. I played hockey and soccer and so forth, and I thought that was befitting more of my personality and, you know, the way I saw life. But the ear, nose, and throat became more intriguing because it was much more complex.
Right.
And so I drove down that pathway, and then as I got more and more into it, the cosmetics wasn't so much of a turn on anymore, because then you got to deal with people complaining they didn't look like this person or that person, and like unrealistic expectations. So I delved into otology and neurotology, and I got into
Can you define that? I don't know what that is.
That is the study and practice of managing ear diseases or disorders of the ear, and then neurotology with tumors that are on this side of the skull, where, yes, we did surgeries with the neurosurgeons, but we were the ones that were dealing with the hearing nerve and the balance nerve and the facial nerve. We were the facial nerve doctors. So, you know, people with the Bell's palsies and stuff like
I've
that.
had that.
Incredible.
So,
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
A little
interesting.
scary for a while. It didn't really do anything, but it was scary for a minute.
well, because most people, when they first get it or experience it, they think that they're having a stroke.
Well, I was literally, we were driving by the Scottsdale Stroke Center as it was happening, and that's when we pulled in, and they knew it wasn't a stroke pretty
What were
quickly.
your symptoms?
Literally, my face
Just droop.
just drooped.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Just-
scary.
What exactly are the causes of that then?
That's a good question.
It's usually due to a viral infection. You know,
Interesting.
we're exposed to
Wow.
viruses
Shoot.
continuously. I mean, they're everywhere.
Mhm.
I mean, while we're in this room together,
Mhm.
which is a wonderful thing, we're basically sharing each other's bacteria and viruses just from breathing onto each other, you know? And that's what it is.
You better
And-
not be sick.
Not this perfect body, come on. You know, but hey, listen, I got herpes, I got HIV, I got hepatitis, but I don't have COVID. So you're okay.
That's a joke. He's joking, guys. He's joking.
So,
But I have to say, I want you to continue with that story. But as we were discussing in a meeting prior to this podcast, he said, look over at that gentleman sitting there at the bar. He said, how old do you think he is? And I said, I don't know, maybe 55, 60. And he said, look at his back. Look at those fat rolls on his back. And look at the way he looks. He said, that is not acceptable. And I agree with that, because you were basically saying that he's going to cause any disease, or because we were talking about being proactive and how with health, the way to stay healthy is not wait till something bad happens, it's be preventative.
Oh,
and so he was showing me and pointing out this guy.
At my age, I think we're about the same age. That's definitely the journey I'm on, is trying to figure out what is going to be good for me, because I can't do the things and eat the things and drink the things that I could 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
well, and that's the purpose of my quest.
Longevity.
It's longevity, but you know, you could live the last 10 years in a convalescent home
Exactly.
Right.
because you have
Yes.
Alzheimer's. Now,
Yep.
is it preventable? Absolutely. You'll speak to your conventional physicians, and I'm a conventional physician, but I practice alternative medicine. But more
Alternative
so
medicine.
than
I love that.
I was a competitive bodybuilder. I learned more from the gyms about diet and nutrition than the dietitians and nutritionists that we had at the hospitals. In fact, I argued with them, and then when in general surgery, I was saying, listen, we're cutting these people open, right? And going through surgery is like running a marathon. It's that stressful. And then afterwards, we got to keep you NPO, which means without food or drink, you know, by mouth. And we had a tube down in your nose, all the way into your stomach, suctioning out any stomach secretions. We had to let those intestines heal, so at least for 5 days. So we had an IV, and what was in the IV? D5W1/2, right? So what was that? D5 was just sugar, dextrose, with a little bit of sodium chloride. So it's basically sugar water and salt. It's Gatorade. Well, eventually, you know, I start researching this. Well, with my body, I'm like, wait a minute. If you go through so much stress and the immune system requires protein, then we should be doing central lines. And central line is where you put in a large bore catheter into the jugular vein or subclavian vein. And that way you could provide them with some, let's say, medium chain triglycerides okay, which everybody's big on for the ketogenic diet, and some amino acids.
Right.
Well, here I'm arguing with the nutritionist, says, well, 30 grams of protein. I said, 30 grams? I'm consuming 300 grams of protein. Well, these people are sick. No, they had a disease. They have no kidney problems. They don't have any other issues. They have this disease. We had to do surgery, or they ruptured a diverticuli, and, here they are on antibiotics. But
sugar.
Without the nutrition or nutritional basis to support the immune system.
Right.
So that's why they were getting nosocomial infections. Now, this is in the days when I used to work 36-hour shifts, 72-hour weekends.
Now the research and the data it sounds like it's proving you right, because when people are on in ketosis, their bodies heal much, much faster than if they have sugar or their carbohydrates, right?
That's right. But here's the whole thing too, is when you're going through that stress, your body starts putting out more and more cortisol and adrenaline.
Right.
So it jacks up your sugar levels. And that's why a lot of these people, when they have this, their doctors are putting them temporarily on insulin. Well, why are you feeding them sugar? Oh, yeah. So the stress, so people go through a lot of stress. You'll see in the intensive care unit, your intensivist will have to monitor their blood sugars.
So if I have any family member go in the hospital, you are on speed dial. You're my new best friend. Because we can consult you and see what you need.
But I'm going to tell you, here's what happened to a friend of mine. He was a former Marine, and he contracted COVID. And so he was admitted to the hospital. His sister is a trauma surgeon at the same hospital that I was at. Okay? But somehow he trusted me over his sister.
Wow.
And
that says a lot.
He was, he fought in Bosnia. He was like 6'4". I mean, that was a monster. And he got in there. He said, Doc, what should I do? What should I do? I said, stay away from the sugars. Now we've got some.
And we have not discussed sugar. He and I have not. Have we discussed sugar? Because Chet thinks I always am telling him he shouldn't have sugar. Have we? You and
no.
We have not.
As you drink it all the time.
Okay. Other than this, I don't have.
Do as
sugar.
I say, not as I do, Chet.
Because Chet consumes a lot of sugar, and I'm concerned about him.
Okay,
I think he's talking specifically when you're in the hospital.
Okay.
No.
Right?
I'm speaking now. Because Jack LaLanne, remember Jack LaLanne?
Yes.
So in 1973, when I was 10 years old, remember we're going back to my 4th grade year when I decided to become a doctor.
Yes.
Jack LaLanne was on TV.
Tell Chet who he is. Chet doesn't know.
Jack LaLanne was the first man, okay?
Yeah.
Actually, the first individual.
I remember the Lane juicer and stuff. He was a bodybuilder, right?
Okay, so listen. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
So he used to come on television during the middle of the day, right? And he would show women how to exercise. And his biggest pet peeve was when doctors would say to the women, now don't do what Jack LaLanne does. You're going to get sterile. You're not going to have... He was a chiropractor. But he was telling everybody back then, and this was the early 70s, he was the first man to start, showing people how to exercise on TV.
So cool.
Right?
I totally understand.
And he was
Before Chuck Norris.
Oh yeah, all before all these guys.
Oh, yeah.
All before these guys. Richard Simmons and all of these guys. I mean, Jack LaLanne was the guy. And
My dad actually got to meet him.
He would have
My dad would-
advertisements in the
my dad loved
comic
him.
books.
I remember
My dad
seeing
loved
so
him.
many Chuck
Yeah.
Norris ads for the
I got to
Total
meet him.
Gym. The
Well,
Chuck
now-
Norris just
Yeah.
breaking shit.
Guess what Jack LaLanne was telling us back then? Stay away from sugar. If you're going to have your coffee, make sure you put honey in it. Stay away from that sugar. Eat fruit. And then he was advocating all this stuff. He says you don't need sugar. So he was already advocating it back then. The 60s was an interesting time because that's when sugar started to go on the incline as far as consumption. Dr. Feingold was talking about excessive sugar causing attention deficit disorder in children on top of the other chemicals we're putting in our foods like the colors, preservatives.
Oh my gosh.
Now
that's
it's gone
crazy.
from sugar to corn syrup, which is even worse. So the key is that
It's wild you're saying that because the one friend I can think of when I was like growing up, like, kindergarten, that age, that had the worst ADD by far, bouncing off the walls. He was the one kid whose mom let him have like Coca-Cola or any type of sugar whenever he wanted. Like I loved going to his house because I knew it was just going to be a free-for-all.
I know who it is. I know who
Whatever
it is.
sugar I wanted.
I won't say, but I know who it
and
is.
yeah, well, it definitely changed his neurochemistry because your brain's not meant to process that much sugar. It's like almost like a drug at that point, like the
I agree.
dopamine rush.
Yes.
And Dr. Robert Lustig out of the University of Southern California, who's the head of the Department of Pediatric Endocrinology, went on a
Great.
quest. This guy went on a quest because he started seeing this in the
Mm-hmm.
pediatric population. He actually went to law school to study the law and see how things were written. Well, in 2000, I met him at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And then in 2004, he produced a lecture that was videotaped and went viral. And you know what he says about sugar? It is toxic.
Mhm.
He says it's toxic. So when people say, so you can't have any sugar? And he says, well, I'm not saying you can't have a little sugar once in a while, but we are over consuming it. However, I've given in my talks, we don't need sugar to live.
Mhm.
We do not need sugar to
And
live.
don't you think that those people who consume a crazy amount are like borderline addicted? Like those people who can go to a Cinnabon and order the extra large one that's like the size of a pizza.
I used to be that guy.
But
I was absolutely
extra
addicted to
large
sugar.
one though,
100%.
that would make me sick, and I still
When
love
I
eating
was-
dessert every day.
Okay,
But
but
like,
hold on.
it's all about moderation.
If somebody is having a Coca-Cola in a day, an orange juice, a dessert, a brownie, is that too much sugar in a day? And they're doing that daily?
They're not eating. That's not food.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You know what that's called?
What's that called?
Caca. Okay? Caca that's been sprinkled with a sweetener that's toxic. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you folks, and this is the problem. You
You're
know,
perfect for this show.
somebody was one of the guys from Fox News. I don't watch the news. I don't watch any of that stuff. But it was on a reel, and I was watching him, and I can't remember the guy's name on Fox News. He says, "I'm going to tell you the story about Jimmy." And Jimmy's this little boy that wakes up in the morning, and mommy and daddy got to go to work, so I don't have time to make breakfast. So he gets some breakfast cereal. Now, being from Michigan, Battle Creek is where, the Kellogg's actually started their
Mhm.
Kellogg's cereal company. But Dr. Kellogg's was helping people with digestive ailments. And that's how they came up with the cereals of taking corn and rice and wheat products and making it in a manner that it was easier to digest so that they can start regaining their strength. This has all been new. Now, this country of Japan, the country of Japan just banned all Kellogg's products because they have BHT, which is a butylated hydroxytoluene, and it's cancerous. Now, if you look it up, because you see, I do my research. I go look it up and say, what is Wikipedia? It's an antioxidant. Ooh, it's an antioxidant, like vitamin C. We're being deceived.
And BHT's in so many things beyond cereal too. It's freaky.
Absolutely.
It's
Go to a
freaky how
gas
much stuff
station.
it's in.
Travel across America. I did that 3 times in 2023. I said, I want to see America. I went to a conference in San Diego. I said, I'm going to drive out there. And then I stopped over here, and then I came out here twice, but I drove. St. Louis, Amarillo. I took the old Route 66, right? And one of the interesting things was every city you had billboards. It was all the tourists, right? Oh, got hit by a truck. We'll fight for you. Yeah, let's get your money. See the homes that these guys live in, right? But more so than that, everywhere you stopped, even in these small towns, where you had to stop to get gas, there was a Subway, there was a McDonald's, there was a Pizza Hut, and what have you. But then you go into the gas station, it's just all these little baggies of gummy bears.
Twinkies and ding dongs
yeah.
and yuck.
And so, and you got the truck drivers.
It's like you say, it's pervasive. I mean, the McDonald's food in Japan, I've been there, is very different than the food here. They don't have nearly as much sugar. Japanese don't like that much sugar
But
even
it's
in
still
their
not
candies.
good. Do you consider any of those foods that you just mentioned?
No. Now, will I say that I had them as a child growing up? Yes, but because of my immigrant parents, especially my mother, and where I grew up in Detroit, a lot of the parents, Polish, Germans, and even black people, because we have a large black population. Back in the 60s and 70s, it's like, and I remember Eddie Murphy. Remember Eddie? You may not remember Eddie Murphy.
Oh, we love Eddie Murphy. You know who he is, yeah.
Eddie Murphy was saying, "Oh, my friends would, they would make fun of me because they had a McDonald's burger, and the mother would say, well, here, I'll make you a hamburger, right, and put the onions in." I'm like, oh my God, that's how my mother makes it, right? "Ma, can you take this to McDonald's?" "No, I'll make you a sandwich. You can eat it at home." It's just the way it was. We ate at home all the time.
That's right.
And at least you knew what you were cooking. Now, it's fascinating because my grandfather was a chef in an Italian restaurant in the late 60s and 70s. And he was at one of the very, very prestigious, reputable Italian restaurants. And he never ate at the restaurant.
Mm.
Nonno. Ma perché, now I'm speaking Sicilian, that's a dialect. Ma perché non ti mangi un mangiare dallo ristorante? No, è mangiare fitoso. It's dirty food.
Mm.
He would say that.
Because they used to cut the olive oil with vegetable oil. So you weren't really using, and the olive oil that he used at home was from Castelvetrano, which is the town that he was born in. So he knew the olives in that town and how they made. The bread had to be baked at home. It couldn't come from an Italian bakery. He didn't trust them.
Okay, what I love is where I met Dr. Sal is at one of my favorite Italian restaurants. I'm going to give them a plug, and I'm going to tell Roberto.
Yes.
He knows that the restaurant that we love, where we met, Veneto. Is that how we pronounce it?
Trattoria.
Yeah. He sources all his meats and his olive oil, and everything is the best you can buy. And he knows it, and that's why he eats there. That's where we met.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. And
I mean, I go back in the kitchens and I say, "What do you guys got?" I don't want to mention the name because
My dad did that. My dad did that.
I wanted to see what. So there's a place not too far from here, and everybody talks about how great it is. And then when I saw them make it, I said, "What kind of oil is in that?" And you know all those little squeeze bottles like the ketchup and then.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, it's olive oil." I said, "Really?" First of all, it wasn't green or yellow. It was just like transparent. I said, "Can I see where it came from?" So I go in the back, and it comes in a jug, and of course it's soybean oil, and it's got carcinogens in it.
Oh my gosh!
So that's why I don't eat at restaurants. You know, my stuff has got to be organic, farm raised.
Yeah,
milk
it's
is raw.
funny that you're saying that because I've noticed as I'm eating cleaner and cleaner because I've been on this journey. I was the guy that ate too much sugar and was overweight, and I've been on a pretty long journey. And what I'm finding is that my body is getting more and more sensitive to those kind of things, like processed foods, and sodium nitrate just is a killer for me.
And the coloring that's in everything.
I haven't noticed the coloring, but there are. At most restaurants, I feel the effects a few days later. But if I'm cooking at home, it's much less. And
well, that's
that
why
makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm going to plug another restaurant. The only restaurants where they only have great ingredients and everything's sourced amazing and the oils and all that are Sam Fox restaurants and Veneto and the Houston
I'll check it
restaurants.
because I'm new to this area. I only moved here a year ago. But Martin, let me ask you something. If you had to compare your body to a car, would it be like a Ford truck? Would it be a General Motors Chevy Impala?
Probably 10 or 15 years ago, it would have been like Mater, the tow truck from that movie
Oh,
Cars.
yes.
It was reliable.
Yeah, it was reliable. It helped a lot of people, but now I would say I am what I drive. I'm a Toyota Rav. I don't have as much power as I would like to have. I don't go as fast as I used to, but I get there and I'm reliable about it.
Sure.
What about you, Chet?
I don't know. That's kind of an interesting
It's
question.
a fun question.
Yeah.
Think on that, and let's ask Dr. Sal.
Well,
Dr.
no, it
Sal.
would have to be some type of a sports car because I love going to the gym for at least like an hour or two a day and like going really hard. So that's like high energy output. So I guess like a Ferrari.
Good, because I'm going to say Porsche for me. What about you?
Beautiful. Okay, so now here's my argument to you, Chet. So I was into Corvettes, and I rebuilt a '69 Corvette, and I put the engine blew. I had the original big black 427, and then they had Barrett Jackson here. Oh my God, I was going crazy over the Vats and the Cadillacs. And,
I bet.
so everybody says, "Oh yeah," and like you say you're a Ferrari. Well, you're not going to go very far, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in my Corvette, I had to put 110 octane fuel. It was expensive. It's high quality. You don't put caca in a Ferrari. You don't take it to a local Yoko dealer and says, "Can you change my oil on my Ferrari?" An oil change in a Ferrari, because most of my cousins and uncles all have Ferraris back in Michigan. Because we're Italians and we're builders and we got to drive Ferraris. Whether it's Lamborghini, you're putting caca in the Ferrari.
Well, no, I agree.
Going to the gym ain't gonna do nothing.
I don't know. I agree. Nutrition is super important, but
Chet drives only Porsche.
Well, no, the
Porsches.
one fact that does kind of, you could say, negate that though is the fact that a lot of NBA teams or NFL teams still totally eat junk food for one meal a day.
Okay,
but they eat mostly
I need
quality.
you to debate him on
But
this.
they can
He
totally
thinks
have a
that-
cheat meal. Like
Okay,
a lot of
hold
the NBA rookies or NFL rookies, when they get to the new city, they have to go pick up Chick-fil-A for the team. And
That's right.
Chick-fil-A is loaded with shit.
Here's the thing.
Caca.
So I was with Dr. Godfrey at the University of Pennsylvania.
This is a great discussion.
Okay, guess who are the worst conditioned professional athletes?
NFL, I mean, it'd have to.
NBA.
How?
Because you see,
They
here's
run
the
the
thing.
most.
Yeah, I know, but guess what? It's only 15% of your health. And I learned that when I joined the original Powerhouse Gym back in 1978. This big black man by the name of Levon Labasha Hall just came in from California, right? And everybody from different parts of the country have an accent. He used to say, Sal, 85% of bodybuilding is what you eat. So here's the thing. You can go off and you can take your anabolics. I've seen guys at the gym and like, man, I just had 6 hot dogs and 12 beers at the Tiger game, right? And they're bench pressing 400 pounds. Means nothing. Because I'm going to tell you something. With today's technology, I was working with Next Medical. I'm still part of the company, Next Medical Solutions. We have a technology that can identify diseases 10 years before your blood work and radiographic.
Wow.
And it's not going to get out into conventional because of the fact that if we could do that, these corporations that now own the hospitals are not going to want people to use preventative medicine. That's why there's this big,
Yes.
challenge right now. And,
Do you think some of these NBA
Well, one question I
athletes are
have though
being
is,
paid
I'm
to say I
confused
eat
by
all
your-
these hot
your-
dogs and
I'm-
hamburgers?
Wait,
Probably.
hold on. I want to ask a question by like what metric you're trying to claim NBA players are the worst condition, because I saw a stat that came out that said they burn the most calories per minute out of any professional sport.
Here's the whole thing.
Wait,
okay?
if you're burning the most calories,
This
that
is
means
good,
you have
this
the
is good.
most exerting.
This is good.
If you're
This is
burning
good.
more
This is
calories than
good.
any other
This is
sport,
good.
that means the most exerting.
Okay,
That's
let's
a
talk
fact.
about the calories, right? You're going to go on a diet, and I'm going to put you on 1,000 calories a day diet, okay? And I did it with the HCG diet. Now, we couldn't do the 500 calories a day like they did in India because Dr. Simeon.
Well, can you answer my question?
I'm
Bill?
gonna
Was it
answer it right
lung
now.
capacity? What was the metric you're saying with the
The
worst condition?
cardiovascular system is starting to break down, and here's the reason, okay?
So you're telling me NBA players had worse cardio than NFL?
Here's the reason.
That sounds like laughable because NFL
I'm glad that
linemen
you're-
can't
Well, hold on.
continue cardio. They literally can't.
Allow me to explain it, okay? You could lose your weight by eating 1,000 calories a day, and you could either do it by eating 3 Milky Way bars a day, or you can eat chicken, fish, lean meats, and vegetables in 1,000 calories a day. Here's the problem. What we were doing with the NMS 100 is we were identifying diseases years earlier. 28-year-old young man comes in, he works at construction. He's built, man. He's solid. He's swinging a hammer. He's lifting stuff. He's working 12 hours a day.
And you've done that.
Oh, yeah.
what is it? Yeah.
And then we
that's
find
amazing.
out that, hey, man, you're developing insulin resistance.
Which means what? I know what that means.
It's
For our listeners, let them.
Pre-diabetic. He was
Yeah.
becoming pre-diabetic at the age of 28.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started saying, what do you eat during the day? He had 4 16-ounce Red Bulls
Shoot.
to give him the energy. So guess what? You take a look at this guy, he can outwork anybody in this room, but guess what? He's already breaking down. And what I'm saying is that maybe right now, because you're young and you could tolerate it, but you're already starting to erode the foundations.
Yes.
And what they're doing with Chick-fil-A is they're already starting to break down the endothelial lining of the cardiovascular system, being that your father was a cardiologist.
Yes.
Today, this is what I'm talking about, right? You hear the guy that goes and says, hey, I just went to go see the doctor, and he says, I'm perfectly healthy. 3 months later, what happened? He says, I don't know, man, I found something over here, and went to go see the doctor. They biopsied it, and then now I got cancer. And what I'm saying is that don't be deceived by appearance, because you could see the guy that's big and I used to see big guys coming into the gym and they couldn't only bench press 95 pounds. But then I saw guys that were on anabolic steroids bragging about how much beer and hot dogs they ate at the Tiger baseball game. But guess what? You could look strong and you could run up and down the court because they're still young. But the question is they're already starting to cause the deterioration process, versus if they were to go back, because I'm going to tell you something about Southern black people that I grew up with in Michigan that were from Mississippi and Alabama. I mean, These people that lived in Mississippi, there was one girl that I went to high school with. Her name was Mary, and she would go and visit her grandparents and stay in Alabama for the summer. She said, Sal, I would take my glass and just take the water right out of a little streaming creek that was ice cold. And the grandfather died at 106 and the grandmother was 98. If you take a look at these people, the way they lived off the land. They grew their own chickens, their own pigs, they grew their own vegetables. Everything was natural.
Clean.
What did you guys use for fertilizer? Horse manure, cow manure, chicken manure. I learned that. And the only time they had these desserts was when grandma was making that cherry pie or that peach pie
For
or
birthday.
for birthdays, but for on Sunday for after church. That was the treat. You go to the Southern Baptist Church and they're there for 3 hours screaming and hooping and hollering, and then they're feasting, and all of a sudden there's that pie. They
Once a
weren't
week.
going once a week. They weren't going off and buying, Chips Ahoy or Oreo cookies. They weren't drinking that. And what I'm saying is,
We're having a brownie every day.
yes, and that's my point.
Well, and I
What-
can speak to that just being almost 60 now, is that I was very strong in my 20s, but I ate horribly, and I'm paying for it now.
Yeah.
And now I'm having to
Is it-
completely
Is this a good
reset
analogy?
myself.
How about skin cancer? You don't go out in the sun and it happens in one day. It's accumulative. It's the same thing.
everything, our bodies are like a bank. Okay, you either could keep spending the money or you could be putting in wooden nickels. It's not going to amount to anything.
Well, and the evidence that proves this to be true the most is that the athletes who are lasting like into their 40s are the ones who are insanely disciplined. Like LeBron is doing crazy shit right now at 40, and it's because
Brady.
he's probably the most disciplined in the NBA
Exactly.
as far
I
as his
doubt
diet.
he's eating
Yeah, he's
Chick-fil-A.
probably
Right.
skipping out on when they pick up the Chick-fil-A because
Exactly.
he wants to play until he's like 43 or something.
So now let me ask
So-
you a question. How long were we genetically designed to live? Genetically designed. How long can we actually live?
Well, can I answer? My grandma was healthy and happy until 2 days before she died. She died at 105, and she ate everything that was homemade, pretty much. And if we went out, she only went to really nice places where she could see the kitchen, and it was 105.
But by definition, by his definition, she had some caca every day. She had a dessert every day. She would eat a piece of pizza if it was there. She was not disciplined about what she ate every day.
Okay,
So she was
Well, the
an
original
example
question
Hold
was
on,
how old,
hold
though,
on.
right? So
I'm gonna argue
thinking
that.
120,
But
150.
no, we've had shows in the past where we talked about how she had sweets or booze every day. So she was the
She had a glass
embodiment
of
of
wine with
being
dinner.
active.
She had a
to
glass
make
of wine
you
with
live
dinner,
long.
and it's true that I would say that her every, I would say 4 days a week.
Well, last time I
everything was
hung out with her,
homemade.
she was starting with whiskey by about 3.
Well,
so
my grandfather died in
Wasn't
'96,
it
and
wine
he
at
drank a fifth of whiskey, a 6-pack of beer, and smoked cigarettes since he was 14. So
Was he
that's
active?
part of it.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, so he was
absolutely.
active.
So, but now
so
here's-
you can be
My
put
grandma was
caca
very
in there and be
active.
active and make it.
So now let's take this to the clinic, okay? Let's
Okay.
bring it into
Yeah,
the
okay.
medical realm
Yes.
now.
And
okay?
I want to say more, but you ask me questions, and I can about my grandma.
We'll take my two grandfathers. One
Okay,
smoked 2
okay.
packs of cigarettes a day, the other one 3 packs of cigarettes a day.
Oh, damn, they party.
Now, then we had the World War II veterans that used to smoke 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes and drink a fifth of whiskey a day. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, because when I was a resident in otolaryngology or ear, nose, and throat, we were doing head and neck cancers back then. Base of tongue cancers, laryngeal cancers, submandibular cancers. And there were times where we literally had to take the bone out. We did the traditional commandos, and then free
Did you have
flaps.
to reconstruct the face? Oh my god.
Well, back then those people, they couldn't be reconstructed until free flaps came up. And free flaps, we would take bone, muscle, and skin and reconstruct their mandibles. And we were doing that at the University of Michigan.
Gosh.
But these people were in their late 70s and early 80s. Okay, so before I retired from conventional medicine, I'm seeing head and neck cancer in 55-year-olds. And they weren't drinking the kind of alcohol, but they would have a pack a day. Now, how is it that my grandfathers, I should say, and these World War II veterans could smoke 2 to 3 packs with all that whiskey and all that booze and make it to the early 80s? And the reason being, and here's the key. Here's the key, okay? When you and I grew up, we drank Coca-Cola that had what kind of sweetener in it?
Sugar.
Now, in 1993,
Corn syrup.
Corn syrup.
big tastes the same, looks the same, smells the same, so you think it's the same,
It's
but the
poison.
way it's metabolized in the body is completely different. Now, my grandfathers smoked natural cigarettes. So when I used to go to Italy, my dad would give me a carton of Marlboro Reds. I said, what am I going to do with those? He says, well, when you get over there and you find, let's say, a taxi driver, give him an American Marlboro Red. Well, I go to Italy and I said, well, they got Marlboro Red and they got Marlboro Lights over here, you know. They like the American brand. You know why?
And all the chemicals and shit,
It
probably.
had a different flavor. They had natural tobacco in Europe. My grandparents and the World War II veterans were smoking natural cigarettes. Now you start adding the preservatives, the chemicals. What they did and how the cigarette companies got into trouble is they would go certain months and they start spraying nicotine into the tobacco. Why? So if you smoke 10 cigarettes a day, then you got used to smoking 10 cigarettes, but you're smoking those 10 cigarettes, but now getting higher levels of nicotine. Now then they would stop doing that, and now you're smoking the same 10, and it's like, it's not kicking it in, so you start smoking more. Now they genetically modified. So what I'm trying to say is that the Coke that, you know, that Martin and I drank is different than the Coke you're drinking. So and this is the studies that Dr. Robert Lustig, who I mentioned earlier, was doing, and he was saying that since 1993, in 40 years from that date, we're going to have people that are going to have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is known as cirrhosis, because corn syrup gets metabolized.
From corn syrup?
Corn syrup gets metabolized like alcohol. He even stated that. And so when I looked it up...
Well, it's interesting you say that because from my son, who's 24 years old, he has cirrhosis of the liver already. And from what I'm understanding, this is an epidemic in that age community right now.
Well, this is what happened.
This is the recent thing that he was in the hospital and
Oh,
nobody
yeah.
knew what, you know,
So
it was an emergency.
He's on the donor
and now
list.
Okay, so here's what
Very
happened.
recent.
Dr. Lustig said that in 40 years, we're going to have people with cirrhosis, and they're going to go in and they're going to tell the doctors, I never had an alcoholic beverage. What I started seeing when I was at the Detroit
You might
Medical
be
Center-
saving somebody's life in this room.
Well, my objective is to get people to change their level of consciousness, to be aware, okay? I don't try to save people. I'm not one of those, you know, you got to be born again, you know, this and that. But I will talk about Christ because he was a very, very wise individual. And so even he was hanging on the cross, right? You remember some of the things that he said when he was on the cross? He said, forgive them, Father, for they know not.
What they do.
What does that mean?
We're ignorant.
We're unconscious.
It's not intentional.
The key is we have the power of choice. And the thing is my objective with my podcast, with my books, which I'm getting one edited right now, and now I'm doing this, trying to get into this television show on the Mark TV.
Well, let's talk about that next, shall we?
Sure.
We'll announce
No,
it.
but what I'm saying is...
Got some exciting stuff coming
What
up.
I'm trying to get people to do is to wake up. You have to be aware, okay? And I use this old example that I learned in martial arts. Master is walking around with a little bamboo stick, and all of a sudden, whoosh, he whacks one of his students in the back.
What? That's.
And then the student turns around and he says, why'd you do that? He said, how come you didn't know that I was going to whack you in the back? Now, here's the whole thing. Here's what I'm thinking. I go into the gym and everybody's got their AirPods and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, you know, they're walking. In the old days, you said hello to somebody, they said hello back, right? So people are not even cognizant of what's happening around them. And I said, yeah,
That's smart. You're bringing awareness. You're right.
That's it. Somebody
right.
comes into the gym, right? You get a lunatic and he starts open firing on everybody. You bet your bottom dollar, I'm going to hit the ground and I'm going to go straight for that guy.
I love that.
Because I did a Shinru, I did Krav Maga, and my thing is I
He's
gotta
always
be the
learning and getting
savior,
better.
right? And I'm going to go after him. I'm going to take that gun, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to shove it where the sun don't shine, and then I'm going to blow his brains out from underneath. But my point being is, your generation that's wearing these AirPods that are blasting that they can't even hear the guy talking.
And you're in his throat. It doesn't that ruin your ears?
Well, because what happens is you're driving more decibels into the ear, which is going to cause later on more hearing loss. Again, it's all accumulative. It's what you put in your piggy bank, little by little. Now, I'm not saying that my Sundays are my days to cheat, okay? And that's the day that I can have some wheat. Now, as an Italian, I have a little bit of pasta, have a little bit of bread. However, I have psoriasis. My grandfather had it. My dad had it.
Okay.
But then I realized
That's inflammation of the skin.
yeah, it's like
Redness.
and then it
Yeah,
gets
I know
itchy
what
and
it
I
is.
start scratching.
But somebody might not know that's listening, so we want to let them
So
know.
here's what
Okay.
I discovered when I got off of all this wheat many, many, many years ago. When I was competing for my bodybuilding competitions, I'm like, my skin got better. Why? Because I wasn't eating all these carbs, but mostly I wasn't eating wheat. Now, the wheat in America is genetically modified. So there's a book out there by Dr. William Davis, a cardiologist, that will tell you the detriments of genetically modified wheat. And so before he even puts anybody on a medication, you're off of wheat for 12 weeks.
That's great.
And guess what happens?
Wow.
He said more than half of my patients don't need medication. So right there,
Wow.
right there.
Which proves he's a great doctor because he's doing that.
because
being
he cares
preventative.
about people.
He does care.
No, I'm not
That's
saying
how my dad was.
I'm not saying that conventional physicians don't care. It's just that they don't know. But then again,
But some don't care, but a lot do. There's a lot of great doctors.
there's a
that have
lot
been
of
on the
great
show.
doctors.
A lot
but,
of great doctors.
you
I love
know,
doctors.
Well, it feels
We
like
have
the
a lot of
vast
doctors on the
majority
show.
are treating the symptoms instead of trying to make people healthy.
Yes, but the fact of the matter is this is why I'm the most laughed at physician by the conventional doctors. And I say, but dude, Dr. Martin, Dr. Kinga,
Yes.
you know, are you talking to your patients? I mean, like, are you trying to get them to Sal, you don't think I've already done that? So who's not listening?
Okay, but I have to say, my dad would always do the preventative, proactive, alternative medicine to his patients, and he would always get referrals from another doctor, Dr. Dietrich, that would have, they would come to him, and my dad would say, yes or no, you need this surgery,
Right.
and many other doctors. And my dad would say, he'd say, bring your cigarettes. He wouldn't say, do you smoke? He'd say, bring your cigarettes, I want to see if it's a good kind. And then he'd say, and bring your socks. I want to see what kind of socks you're wearing. And people were like that. And so next visit, bring this, bring that. And then he would take their cigarettes, and I worked in his office, and he'd crush them and he'd throw it in the trash. And then he'd say see the socks, and he'd cut them. And he'd say, now, if you want to keep coming to me, you can't smoke, and you need to wear your socks like this. And then I'm going to put you on this food regimen and exercise. And then we'll see you in like a month
Yeah.
and see where we are. He really cared about his patients.
Well, what I did with my smokers, okay, because what doctors don't realize, you got to quit smoking. Okay. Doctors don't understand.
Tell that to my 83-year-old dad.
How?
Not gonna happen.
But at 83, it's a different story. Because even when my Uncle Joe wanted to quit, I said, Joe, it's Seal in Italian means uncle. I said, Joe, I mean, at this age, I mean,
The damage is done.
it's done. You've been smoking
ship is
since you were
sailing.
10.
Yes.
You smoke 2 packs a day. I mean,
Yes.
but my point being is that to even quit smoking, even after a handful of years of smoking, okay, nicotine is more addictive than heroin, and people do not realize that. So I had a smoking cessation program that was more effective.
What
And
else have you not? Oh my God, you do everything. Okay.
this is why I'm now writing this down into programs and trying to get it out there. But one of the things was, okay, what kind of cigarettes are you smoking? So they tell me the brand. I says, okay, you're going to American Spirits. Let's go to a natural cigarette that doesn't have all these chemicals. Okay? So let's go natural. Then we're going to smoke a half a pack a day. That's 10 cigarettes. So we're cutting it. That's the major cutback.
That's smart. It's gradual.
Yes. So you're going to smoke 10 cigarettes a day for a whole month. And then the next month, you're going to only count out 9, get yourself a separate box, and that's it. So you could you could disperse it throughout the day. So
Right.
it's not,
So smart.
so it's not like, oh, it's 4 o'clock and I ran out of cigarettes. Make it easy so it's slowing it down, right? And then the next month, 8 cigarettes a day for a whole month and so forth. By 10 months, you're pretty much done. Now, you put somebody on a patch after 3 weeks and, you should stop, right? But you got to take care of this part. People who have
You are
this
so smart.
habit, they got to have something in their mouth. So start putting in a toothpick, put a match over there.
How
try to
about
be
start
real
kissing
cool.
somebody? Get a relationship.
You know what?
Hello.
Okay, now, that's going to allude to one of the other things, because my cousins, they eat and they're, we text each other and they're showing, oh, look what I'm eating, look what I'm eating, look what I'm eating. Well, then my cousin, his blood pressure was going up. I said, you guys got to stop eating as much as you. He said, well, what are we going to do? I said, well, instead of eating 5 times a day, have sex 4 times a day and eat once a day. And guess what, man? That's the best thing that you can do. I mean, Barbara Streisand in an interview was asked, what's your most favorite thing to do? She says, have an orgasm. And I'm like, beautiful. That's what I want to hear. You know, we want to talk
So
about...
is that anti-aging?
Yes,
I know the
have
answer.
sex 4 or 5 times a day. See how long you're going to live. You know? And my point, the reason why I say that, folks, is because of the fact that I like to deal in reality. Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't want to talk about that. You know, the church, this and
No,
that.
no, no,
Hey,
no.
man,
We've had-
my whole thing is that Jesus Christ basically said, you know, when you get married, go at it, man. I just don't want you going around and messing around with other people. And I remember... They were interviewing Roger Staubach from the Dallas Cowboys many years ago, and they were going to be going up against the New York Jets, who at the time was Joe Willie Namath. And Joe Willie Namath had this reputation of being the so-called playboy of the NFL back then. So they, you know, this gentleman asked, I don't know if it was a gentleman or if it was a woman that was interviewed, but I believe it was a man because women were just getting into sports back then, and they said, well, you know, you got Joe Namath over here, and he's a player, and he's got these women and all this, and Roger Staubach says, well, hey, I love sex just as much as Joe Namath, but I like doing it with one woman. And I thought, man, I respected that so much, because when you work in the nightclubs like I did in my early 20s, right?
You must have been a player.
It's easy because you work in a nightclub. It's just, you know, it doesn't matter. I mean, oh, he's the bartender. Oh, yeah, he's hot. You know, back then I was built like, I still am, like a, you know, like a god. You know, I'm just not as big as you know, and I had, you know, hair like this. That's why I'm looking at him. The first thing I said, oh my God, I'd let my hair go down to here if I were you. But you know what? And then I came up, you know, that's why I say that I tell everybody that I'm the former stud of Detroit. I'm the former stud of Detroit.
Wait, what about Alice Cooper? I'm friends with Alice and Cheryl Cooper, and he's born
From
there.
Michigan, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And
He loves Detroit.
oh yeah, he's you know, great guy.
But
He's a
back
more
to you.
impressive musician as opposed to his physique, though.
Oh, I think he's adorable. You know what? When you get to know somebody, it's funny. Like people are asking me. Oh,
Well, I had one more
Okay, go
health-related
ahead.
question.
Okay,
we
okay,
talked
okay.
about
Let's go back to
cirrhosis of
Dr.
liver,
Sal.
but
Back to
that's
Dr. Sal.
kind of a new epidemic with the corn syrup. But isn't it usually caused by people who drink every day? And if somebody's drinking every day, isn't that going to be an inevitable outcome?
It depends on how much you're drinking, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, because when you go to Europe, right?
Yes.
And I've been there well over 40 times. I mean, German beer is
I might have been there more than you.
probably, you know.
I'm just kidding. No, I haven't. I'm just joking.
Well, because of your Polish background.
I've been
you know.
there a lot, but
So-
maybe not.
But
40 times,
drink
so.
German beer, drink Italian wine, okay? And
And don't overdo it. Just 2 or 3 glasses.
but here's the thing too, it's like
different.
it's different. And these people, okay, this is about as much wine as my mother would drink at dinner. Now it's always red wine, okay?
Yeah.
My mother's gonna be 86, and my aunt's here right now, she's gonna be 88. Every night you always had a little bit of wine.
Yeah, so that's a half a glass. She said 3 glasses a night. If you're having a half a glass a
I
night,
said my grandma.
that's 3 glasses in a
no.
week.
I said my grandma would never have more than 3 glasses, and she never drank. Chet said whiskey. One time we showed up at a party when we arrived where she lived in Canada, and she
She was
was
smoking cigars, drinking whiskey at 3 p.m.
she
so that was
was at a
fast.
birthday
And
party.
How old she was? Was she?
She was 96
Damn.
at that
Yeah.
time.
Now here's
That's
what
Or
people have told me.
95.
She had a
So-
younger boyfriend. She always had younger. She always had younger.
He was in
That's
his
a real
70s.
woman. That's a real woman right there. You know, and if she could burp, fart, and pick her nose, man,
Well, the
I
fact
wanna
she was
marry
still
her.
living, the fact she was still living independently at 95 was
Yeah. It's,
No,
Unbelievable.
a marvel in
She
itself.
was at 105.
but Chet, here's what I'm going to
but
say,
again,
okay?
it was different. It's
I-
different what
yeah,
she
but
consumed, right?
More
Yeah.
so than that, though, too, Mark, because
Yes.
I've had people tell me this. Well, my grandmother was 93 years old, and she, you know, she drinks.
Mine was
50.
105 when she died.
But here's my point,
Okay.
man, is that those are anecdotal. The percentage of that happening is
Exactly.
very, very rare.
Yes.
So my question is like when somebody says, "Well, my grandmother did this and that," I says, "Okay, well then you do it. Then you don't want to listen to me. You do it. And then when you get sick or you get cancer or you get
Exactly.
something else,
Yeah.
then what are you going to do? Try to reverse it? Here's the problem. Our bodies, we're creatures of habit. Okay? We're creatures of habit, and that's why, you know, and I can't remember the book or the chapter, but I believe it was in the chapter